I wasn't supposed to be home. Not at 7:12 p.m. on a Tuesday in Highland Park. Not with the sun still smearing peach over the rooftops and the cicadas starting their choir. I should have been on the tollway, fielding investor questions and pretending my company was the most important organism in the room. Instead, the pitch in Austin wrapped early, and muscle memory steered me toward the place I'd convinced myself I was building all this for. I pushed the front door without announcing myself. The alarm chirped, and then I froze. Rosa was on her knees, sleeves rolled to her elbows, dark hair clipped back, pushing a mop across a small lake of apple juice that glowed under the recessed lights. Beside her, wobbling, committed, was my son, Noah, 4 years old, sandy hair sticking to his forehead, balancing on those little forearm crutches painted purple with dinosaur stickers. He had a kitchen towel in his hand like it was a flag. "I got this part," Noah said, jaw set, voice tiny but fierce. Rosa's reply came soft, a tone I'd never heard in this house. "You already did more than enough, champ. Go rest those legs on the couch for me, okay? I want to help. We're a team." My throat closed. When did he learn to say we? Nobody knew I was home, nobody but the old oak door that sighed behind me. When Noah turned and saw me, his eyes lit up and flinched at the same time. That double look hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. "Dad, you're early." "Looks like it," I said, trying to sound like I did this all the time. "What's going on?" He took 2 careful steps toward me, bracing, determined, helping with the spill. "And I stood for almost 5 minutes today." 5 minutes? I glanced at Rosa. She was standing now, apron damp, hands red from scrubbing. She dropped her gaze like she wanted to disappear into the hardwood. "We do exercises," Noah said brightly. "Every day." "Exercises?" I asked, eyes on Rosa. Her voice went careful. "During my lunch break or after chores. Only with your permission if—" "Papa, she teaches me to be strong," Noah said, planting himself between us like a tiny, breathless attorney. "She says I'm a fighter." Something unclenched in my chest in a way I hadn't felt since I carried him out of the NICU in a blanket the size of my fear. My calendar throbbed in my pocket, buzzing with reminders about other people's money. "Noah," I said, as gently as I could, "go upstairs, buddy, brush your teeth, pick a book. I want to talk to Rosa for a minute." He looked at her. She nodded. He clacked toward the stairs, stopped halfway, and shouted, "She's the best person in the whole world." Silence is a funny thing. Sometimes it feels like a question you don't know how to answer. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "About 6 months, Rosa said. "Since I started. My little brother grew up with similar challenges. I learned a lot sitting through therapies, helping at home. I just didn't want Noah to feel alone." "You don't get paid for it." "I'm not asking to," she said, finally meeting my eyes. Her brown eyes were clear, steady, ringed with fear that had nothing to do with me. "I love working with him. He's determined." The word sat between us like a candle. "Where's Vanessa?" I asked. "Dinner with friends," she said. "Said she'd be late." I looked around my own living room, taking in how impossibly clean it was, like I was seeing it for the first time, which maybe I was. "Will you show me the exercises tomorrow?" I asked. "If Noah wants me there." Rosa hesitated. "You're usually gone before 7. "I'll be here," I said, surprising both of us. "I'll make time." Later upstairs, I sat on Noah's rug and watched him sleep. His crutches leaned against the nightstand like sentries, dinosaur stickers staring back at me. My phone lit my face as I canceled 3 morning meetings that were supposed to be immovable. Then I turned off the screen and listened to my son breathe. Vanessa came home at 10:58. I was waiting on the couch, a position I hadn't assumed in years. "You're early," she said, sliding off her heels. "Yeah." "What happened?" "We need to talk about Noah," I said, "and about what's actually happening in this house." She looked at me for a long time, as though deciding which version of me had shown up. "If this is about more specialists, it's about Rosa," I said, and our son smiling in a way I almost didn't recognize. Vanessa sat. The quiet between us was older than our marriage. "I knew," she admitted, "about the exercises. Why didn't you tell me?" Because you'd worry about liability before you asked if he laughed today. We stared at each other across a table littered with magazines I never read. I felt a new kind of embarrassment growing roots in me. Tomorrow morning, I said. I'm there. Pancakes, exercises, all of it. I meant it. I really did. At the foot of the stairs, I paused and called up softly, not sure if he could hear me. Hey, buddy? There was a rustle. Yeah? I want to be your friend, too. The pause stretched like taffy, then. Okay, but you have to listen to my stories. Deal, I said, my voice breaking in a way I didn't try to hide. Before I went to bed, I stood in the doorway of Noah's room and watched the small rise and fall of the most important reason I had to change. If you're listening from anywhere that looks like my living room used to, polished, quiet, a little lonely, tell me where you are. I want to imagine the map we make together, and if this story is touching something true for you, tap that like button and subscribe so we can keep building this place where complicated hearts can breathe. I'll be here in the morning. Morning in our kitchen was louder than I remembered. Maybe it had always been like that, and I'd just outsourced the soundtrack to my calendar. I came downstairs at 6:45 in old jeans and a t-shirt I hadn't worn since college, the kind you can breathe in. Rosa was measuring flour. Mr. Cole, she said, startled. Then she caught herself and smiled. Ethan, you really are early. Thought I'd help, I said, rolling up sleeves like a man who knew how to make pancakes from scratch. Noah likes pancakes. On Mondays, she said, whisking. Says they make his legs brave. Mine too, I said, and startled both of us by meaning it. Noah clattered in at 7:20, hair a haystack, pajamas decorated with rockets. When he saw me at the stove, his face went sunshine. You didn't go to work. I'm here, I said, to watch your exercises, if that's okay with you. It's better than okay. He looked at Rosa with a grin that could redeem a lifetime of missed meetings. We're showing him the balance circles today. Rosa tilted her head toward the backyard. We usually stretch on the grass. Fresh air seems to keep him focused. By 8, the dew had climbed up the cuffs of my jeans. The sky was a clear Texas blue that made the world look honest. Rosa unrolled a mat with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it 100 times without witness. She wasn't a licensed therapist. She reminded me of that twice, but her hands knew how to be kind without being patronizing. Eyes on me, she told Noah. We breathe, we stretch, we try. And if we wobble, that's just a dance. Noah lay back, pulled one knee, then the other, counting under his breath. He smiled at me between reps like he was letting me into a secret club. When he stood, Rosa slid the crutches out of reach, and for a heartbeat every muscle in my body wanted to sprint forward and catch him. 30 seconds, Rosa said. Ready? He nodded, eyes finding a spot on my shoulder. I realized I was holding perfectly still, the way a father does when he's become furniture and anchor both. 15 seconds. 20. At 25, my throat burned. At 30, Noah laughed and then tipped. Rosa caught him by the waist, turned the fall into a hug. I did it, he said. You did, I said, and my voice came out wrecked. We did side steps along a chalk path, then games with beanbags and a rubber ball that became a dragon we had to tame. Rosa narrated in a way that made sweat feel like triumph. After, Noah collapsed in the shade and looked at me like he'd planned the whole morning. Tomorrow we try 45, he said. Tomorrow I'll be here, I answered before my fear could bargain. Inside, Vanessa stood at the window with a mug she hadn't sipped. She looked at the three of us through glass like a scientist studying a phenomenon she wanted to believe in. You canceled your calls, she said when I came in. I did. Her mouth twitched into the shape of a memory. I don't know who you are right now, she whispered. I'm trying to be the man you thought you married, I said, and the dad he thinks I am. We stood there a moment. Then I turned to Rosa. I want to pay you for what you're actually doing, I said. Officially, not just housework. You're Noah's therapeutic companion, and if you're interested in school, community college, certifications, whatever you want, I'll cover it. Rosa blinked hard. I don't have the right papers for PT school yet, she said quickly. But there's a therapy aid program at Dallas College. Night classes. I looked once and She stopped herself, embarrassed by the size of her hope. "Let me worry about the logistics," I said. "You worry about Noah and your own future." She stared at her hands. "Why me?" "Because you're already changing his life," I said. "I just want to stop pretending it's an accident." That afternoon, instead of another strategy session, I opened my laptop and turned my phone face down. I Googled financial aid, accreditation, carpool schedules, the kind of searches I'd never let my assistants see because they made me human. Somewhere between tuition pages and program requirements, the shape of a different life began to show up. The kind with mornings that smelled like pancakes and grass. You can tell a lot about a city by the way it treats the people who care for its children. Dallas shines chrome and marble in high places, but there are also buses that breathe heat and long walks on shoulders without sidewalks. I learned that when Rosa told me her commute started at 5:50 a.m. to catch 2 transfers, the map in my mind rearranged itself humbly. On Thursday, Vanessa had friends over for lunch, women I'd met a dozen times in handshakes and holiday photos. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon and a perfume you can't buy. I ducked out of a call to refill my water and caught a sliver of conversation that had clearly not requested my presence. "And it's sweet, really," one voice was saying, amused in the cruel way of people who have never had to be brave. "But let's not pretend she's anything other than the help." Rosa was in the hall, arms loaded with plates, face gone still in that self-protective way you see on people who have had to explain themselves too many times. "Is there a problem?" I asked, quieter than my pulse. The woman, Sloan something, always with sunglasses on her head, smiled at me with the bright blindness of entitlement. "We were just talking about boundaries," she said. "I mean, it's adorable that she plays at therapy, but liability." I set down my glass. "We don't talk about people like that in this house," I said, the words arriving before the part of me that manages optics. Sloan laughed, looking to Vanessa for air support. Vanessa didn't move. "Rosa isn't playing at anything," I continued. "She's Noah's therapeutic companion, and she's good at it. We respect professionals here, paid or otherwise." Sloan's smile thinned. "Well, of course." After they left, Vanessa sagged against the island. "I should have said something," she whispered. "We both should have said something sooner," I replied, starting with me. I found Rosa in the pantry rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. "I'm sorry," I said. "You shouldn't have had to hear that. You shouldn't have to hear it anywhere." She nodded once, eyes bright. "People say things. It's okay." "It's not," I said. "Also, no more buses. We'll cover a car service until you're comfortable driving ours, or we'll buy you one if you want. We can figure it out. I want your energy on Noah and your classes, not on catching transfers in the dark." She started to protest, then stopped. "Okay," she said in a small voice I hadn't heard. "Thank you." That night, Vanessa crawled into bed late and stared at the ceiling like there were constellations only she could see. "When Noah was diagnosed," she said, "I felt like my life got shrink-wrapped. Every plan dulled at the edges. Rosa showed up and opened a window. I didn't realize how much shame I was carrying until that woman threw it in my face today. I carried my shame into the office and called it ambition," I confessed. "Feels like the same thing, just dressed better." We lay there, 2 people at the edge of a house that suddenly felt too big for who we'd been and just big enough for who we might become. Down the hall, Noah laughed in his sleep, a sound I didn't know until it woke me wanting it again. The offer arrived like bad weather over a lake, dark, irresistible, humming with promise. A competitor, Mark Ellison, a man who had once tried to poach my VP with courtside tickets and stock options, called my cell on a Friday I'd set aside for Lego and laundry. "I hear you've got an exceptional person at home," he said, voice silky with habit. "Lots of exceptional people at home," I said. He chuckled. "I'm talking about Rosa. A friend of a friend told me she's a miracle with kids. My niece has CP. We're building a care team. Name your number. I'll double it." I walked into the backyard, breathed the late afternoon heat. "She's not a number." "Everyone is," he said, not unkindly. "It's business." "Not this," I said, and ended the call. 3 days later, Rosa asked if we could talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd signed term sheets and checks and birthday cards. She handed me a folded piece of paper with a salary offer that made my old, greedy life buzz. My mom could quit nights, she said quietly. My brother could focus on school. We could move to a place with fewer people, in one room. It knocked the wind out of me that I hadn't asked where she went home to, only when she'd arrive here. "What do you want?" I asked. She twisted the corner of the paper. "I want to stay," she said, "but I also want to help them. I don't know how to do both." I thought about leverage and counteroffers, things I could do in my sleep, but this wasn't a negotiation. It was a life. "I can match it," I said, "and add health care for your family. Raise your title. Build a future that doesn't depend on anyone's goodwill, not even mine. We can draft a plan. We'll put proceeds aside for your mom's rent, for your brother's books, for your tuition. You shouldn't have to choose between Noah and your own family." Her shoulders trembled with the weight of possibility. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're the reason my son believes in himself," I said. "Because you're the reason I'm learning to be a better man, and because I don't want the world to teach you that the only way to take care of your own is to leave the places you're needed most." She wiped at her cheeks with the heel of her hand. "Then I'm staying," she said. "If you're sure." "I'm sure," I said, and realized I was. That night I told Vanessa. She listened, then pressed her forehead to mine like we were two teenagers who discovered a new kind of risk. "I kept thinking we couldn't afford this," she admitted, "but I never asked what it would cost not to. Progress hides in small changes, the way summer hides in a Texas March. It starts with a lift in the voice when Noah says, 'Watch me.' It shows up in Rosa's tote bag, textbooks dog-eared, highlighters bleeding neon optimism. It threads through Vanessa's laugh, which returns as if it had been waiting just off stage for the cue line. We built a routine with the reverence of people who've survived without one. Morning stretches, breakfast, class. I pushed meetings to afternoons and said no the way you say no to sugar when your doctor mentions your heart. It felt impossible, then necessary, then ordinary. One morning Noah let go of his crutches and walked 3 steps into my arms. 3 steps. Not a stadium roar, not a headline. Just my son, with the sun blowing our shadows long, launching himself at me like the human he was always going to be. "I did it," he said into my collar. "You did," I said, and I didn't pretend I wasn't crying. Vanessa came out in socks and a satin robe, eyes wide and wet. "Do it again," she whispered. He did. We all did. We repeated it until the day's chores called us back like gravity. In the afternoons, Rosa rode in the passenger seat while I drove her to Dallas College for night classes. She read definitions out loud, gait training, proprioception, gross motor milestones, like they were spells. She'd turn to me with a look that didn't ask for permission so much as partnership, and I'd feel the odd, tender pride of an older brother mixed with the accountability of a boss who wanted to be more than his title. One evening, in a parking lot glowing with sodium lights, Rosa asked, "Why is Noah so sure he can do hard things?" "Because you told him he can," I said. "I tell kids that all the time," she said. "Not all of them believe me." "Maybe it's because he heard it from someone who stayed," I offered. She went quiet. "I used to think staying was what people did because they didn't have options," she said. "Now I think it's what people do when they choose love." At home, Vanessa and I started couples therapy in a small office above a bakery that made bread that tasted like childhood. I told a stranger with kind eyes about nights I'd spent at the office pretending I was indispensable. Vanessa confessed that she'd fallen asleep with her shoes on more times than she could count because the moment she took them off, the house would claim her for another hour of work. The therapist didn't fix us. He held up a mirror until we fixed ourselves. That week, Noah performed his new trick for anyone who'd watch. The mail carrier, the neighbor walking her dog, the Amazon driver who cried and then pretended he had allergies. Every time, Rosa stood nearby, hands hovering just enough to be there if gravity forgot itself. Spring brought a school showcase, tiny chairs, hand-painted banners, a gym that smelled like construction paper and hope. We debated for days whether Noah would bring his crutches on stage. In the end, he lined them up like guardrails by the bleachers and looked at me with that resolute chin I recognized in my own mirror. "My name is Noah Cole," he said into the mic, voice trembling until it didn't. "When I was little, walking felt like climbing a mountain. I still climb, but now I know where to put my feet." He did not perform for applause. He walked, slow, precise, 3 steps, then 5, then a small, careful run no one had seen but us. The room sucked in a breath, then let it out as noise. He pointed into the crowd, scanning faces, and called, "Rosa, come up here." She shook her head, mortified. He beckoned harder. She came. He handed her the mic. "This is the person who told me I could do hard things." Rosa swallowed, looked at me, looked at Vanessa, looked back at the kids with their open faces and their future tense confidence. "I told him," she said, "because it was true. And if it's true for him, it can be true for you." After strangers wanted to know the plan, what stretches, which routines, as if resilience could be bottled and sold next to the PTA cookies. We nodded, shared, laughed, declined to turn miracles into bullet points. That night, at our kitchen table, Vanessa said, "What if we built a place where this isn't rare?" "A center?" I asked. The word felt big in my mouth, like a new language I wanted to learn. "Not just therapy," she said, eyes bright. "A place for families to breathe, for siblings to play, for parents to confess they're terrified, and for kids like Noah to be the teachers." We looked at Rosa. She shook her head in wonder, then put her hand flat on the table like staking a claim. "If we build it," she said quietly, "can I help run it? When I'm ready?" "When you're ready," I said. "We'll be ready too." Dreams are easy. Paperwork is not. Zoning hearings, leases, ADA compliance, insurance binders that read like a foreign alphabet. I learned the names of problems I would have gladly paid someone else to solve. Money helped, reputation helped, but neither could make a permit move faster than the board man at the city counter. We found a squat brick building near White Rock Lake with sunlight like forgiveness. The rent made my CFO raise an eyebrow I didn't know could go that high. We said yes anyway. We patched walls, painted murals, bought equipment with the zeal of people who believed objects can hold intention. Rosa split herself without breaking. Mornings with Noah, afternoons shadowing a licensed pediatric PT we hired as clinical director, nights in class, weekends studying at our dining room table while Noah turned her flashcards into paper airplanes. I watched her vocabulary expand and her questions sharpen. I watched the weight shift in her posture from, "I hope I'm allowed to be here," to, "I belong." The center needed a name. I wanted something lofty. Vanessa wanted something plain. Rosa wanted something that would make her mother smile. "North Star Pediatric Center," Noah declared one night, mouth ringed with cocoa. Because when you don't know where to go, you look up. We looked up. Then we looked at each other. It was perfect. When investors asked if this was philanthropic theater, I invited them to our backyard to watch my son count to 30 without trembling. When detractors said we were undercutting established providers, we asked them to partner. When the city said we needed another inspection, we baked cookies and learned the inspector's dog's name. There was one week I almost quit. A developer offered me a buyout on our company that would have set my grandchildren's grandchildren up for unearned ease. He wanted me full-time for 18 months. "You could fund a dozen North Stars," he said. I looked at Noah sleeping in the next room, his crutches leaning easy against the wall, and I realized I didn't need to multiply impact. I needed to multiply presence. I told the developer no. "I'm already rich in the ways I care about," I said. It sounded naive and brave and exactly right. Opening day felt like a block party for a neighborhood we hadn't known existed until the doors were unlocked. Balloons bobbed, a food truck hummed, toddlers in braces chased bubbles like they were catching planets. Parents cried and laughed and pretended not to be keeping score on their own hearts. Rosa, now Rosa Morales, CPTA, on a badge that made her blush and stand taller, led a circle time where every kid introduced themselves with a strength. I'm fast at puzzles. I can make my dog sit. I remember all the words to Moana. Noah said, I'm good at trying again, and I felt my chest break and heal in the same breath. The rooms we designed lit up with use. A sensory gym with swings like flying commas. A quiet room with a jellyfish lamp that pulsed calm. A kitchen where parents took classes on how to feed kids whose neurology made dinner feel like a battlefield. A lending library of gear and books and somehow hope. Mid-afternoon, during the kind of lull that counts as silence in a room full of children, a man approached me with a boy whose eyes held old storms. We've been everywhere, the man said, voice frayed. We heard, this place is different. I wanted to promise the moon, but all I knew how to guarantee now were mornings and honesty. We'll listen, I said. We'll try. We'll fail sometimes. We'll try again. You won't be alone in the trying. He nodded, and in that nod was a covenant. Later, an email landed from Mark, the rival who'd tried to hire Rosa. He wrote that his niece had enrolled at North Star after all. She came home talking about the lady who looks you right in the eyes when you talk, he wrote. I owe you an apology. I didn't understand what you were building. I get it now. I showed Rosa the note. She read it twice, then looked out the window where Noah and his new friends were inventing a game involving chalk and bravery. We didn't build this alone, she said. He did, and she did, and they did. She pointed, Noah, the kids, the parents holding each other up like scaffolding. Yeah, I said. We just opened the door. Years fold strangely when you anchor them to a child's growth. One evening, the light fell in the backyard exactly like it had that first night. Gold, forgiving. And for a second, I couldn't figure out how Noah had grown tall enough to steal my baseball cap without reaching. He handed me a water bottle and sat on the steps, his knees knobby, his gait now only betraying a history if you knew where to look. Do you ever think about that night? He asked. Every day, I said. The one with the apple juice and the mop? He nodded, smiling. I remember thinking you looked like a giant who was lost in his own house. That's probably accurate. I was afraid you'd send Rosa away, he admitted. I heard other kids' parents talk about how the help should stay in their lane. We don't talk like that, I said reflexively. I know, but I didn't know then. He kicked at nothing, thoughtful. I think that's why I wanted to stand so long that night. Like if I showed you I could try hard, you wouldn't take away the person who made me brave. It cracked something open in me. I wish I could go back and tell you I wasn't going to, I said. I wish I could tell that version of me to kneel down sooner. He bumped his shoulder against mine. You did kneel, he said. Eventually. We watched the oak tree throw lacework shadows across the grass. Do you think all families get a Rosa? He asked, half teasing, half wonder. I don't think anyone gets a Rosa by luck, I said. I think we notice roses by choosing to see. And then sometimes we try to be a Rosa for someone else. He nodded, accepting this as instruction and possibility. I like that. Rosa came out the back door then, still in scrubs, hair escaping its clip, eyes the kind that can hold both your best day and your worst without flinching. Noah stood and hugged her without asking for permission. He didn't need it. How was your day? He asked. A girl took her first 3 steps, Rosa said, and Noah whooped like he'd done them himself. Feels familiar, I said, and we all laughed, the kind of laugh that makes your body remember you're safe. The center had a rhythm now, the squeak of sneakers on padded floors, the whisper of encouragement, the occasional wail alchemized into pride. I spent mornings there sometimes, not as a CEO cutting ribbons, but as a man who knew how to wipe down parallel bars and hand out stickers like medals. A mother stopped me one day with a look I recognized from old mirrors. When did you stop being scared? She asked. I didn't, I said. I just stopped letting fear do the scheduling. At home, our backyard was a reliquary of tiny miracles. The chalk ghosts of balance circles still appeared after rain if you squinted. The old rug in Noah's room still had a dip where I kneeled the first time I told him I wanted to be his friend. The nightstand still bore the scuff marks of crutches leaned and lifted, until they weren't necessary for most days. We gathered there on a Sunday evening when the air tasted like cut grass and barbecued something, our little family with its expanded edges. Vanessa brought lemonade. Rosa arrived late from a discharge meeting with a mother who cried because her son could now climb 3 stairs without help. Noah ran laps he claimed were slow for me, and then collapsed dramatically onto the lawn. "Tell me your best and your hardest from this week," I said, an old therapy prompt that had stubbornly worked its way into our rituals. "Best was teaching Maya that she could rise from the floor without using furniture," Rosa said. "Hardest was telling a dad that progress might look like patience for a while. Best was Coach letting me bat last because he says I'm good at bringing people home," Noah said. Hardest was, sometimes I still feel left behind even when I'm not. We looked at him for a second too long. "Left behind how?" I asked. "Like I know I can do stuff now," he said, picking at the grass. "But my brain remembers the feeling of watching other kids run. Sometimes it gets loud." Vanessa put her hand over his. "We can be loud back," she said, "with love." "Okay," he said, relieved by the permission to name shadows. Rosa looked at me then, and there was something like prayer in it. "Do you ever think about who you'd be if you hadn't come home early that night?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "I think I'd be a very rich, very busy man who couldn't name what his son's laughter sounds like." Noah rolled onto his elbow. "It sounds like this," he said, and flung his head back and laughed so hard the neighbor's dog barked. We stayed until the sky forgot it was supposed to be blue. Fireflies stitched emerald punctuation into the dark. I wanted to memorize it, not to hoard it, but to be fluent in gratitude when fear tried to take the pen. Before we went inside, Noah stood in the spot where the balance circles used to fade and looked up at us all, his mother, his father, the woman who taught him the word, yet. "We're lucky," he declared. "We are," I said, "and we're responsible." "For what?" he asked. "For making sure other people get to feel as lucky as we do," Vanessa said, beating me to it. Rosa squeezed my shoulder as if to say, "See? You chose right." I squeezed back as if to say, "So did you." Inside, by the hall table, sat Noah's old crutches. We hadn't gotten rid of them. We refused to. Not because we needed a reminder of limitation, but because we wanted a museum of perseverance at hand. Some nights when the house is quiet and the calendar is just a rectangle on the wall, I stand there and run my fingers over the dinosaur stickers gone pale with time. I think about mop water shining like a small sea. I think about the versions of us who were sad and brave and didn't know yet that a home's most sacred room is any place where someone believes in you. I don't end this story with a finish line because we didn't cross one. We built a path that keeps unrolling, and we walk it together, wobbling sometimes, laughing often, catching each other as needed. If there's a moral, and I try not to put morals on living things, it's this. Sometimes the miracle isn't that a child learns to run. Sometimes the miracle is that the adults learn to slow down long enough to see him.